start off with a person's name. My father's name was Robert Hugh Porter. And when I was born, I became Robert Hugh Porter Jr. Well, that got names all fuddled up. So my parents said, well, okay, son, your name is going to be R. Hugh to distinguish me from my father. Well, I got to the recruit depot, the Marine Corps recruit depot, which is the initial training for Marines. And we got off, the recruits got off the bus, and there was a drill instructor, really sharp, hat, creases in his shirt, shoes shined, all the things it should be. So I said, okay, line up here on this line, and when I step up in front of you, you tell me what your name is, and I'll check it off on my list here. So he said, okay. So he stepped up in front of me and I said, my name is R. Hugh Porter. And he looked at me, he says, there ain't no such name as that. He says, in the Marine Corps, you have a first name, a middle initial, and a last name. Now, what's your name? And I said, Robert H. Porter, sir. So I became Robert Porter for a long time, and I really don't like that name. So after I got out of the Marine Corps, it's taken me a long time, but I've almost gotten everybody who's my friend to call me Hugh, because I like that name. So that's how I became Hugh Porter.
All right. Do you have just, I guess, could you tell us about your military service from the time you were enlisted? Just any background information or anything encouraged you to enlist?
I guess the war started for me on December the 7th, and I was laying in my living room on the couch reading the funny papers. And a friend of mine, Jerry Hugh, came in and he says, hey, did you know that the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor? I said, no, I can't be worried about that. And I kept reading my funny papers. Well, it turned out that that really was important. I was 17 years old, and I went to my mother and I said, okay, there are 6 of us who were good friends, and we were all going to go down and we're going to join the military. 2 of the boys, the Gamble boys, who were sailors, were going to join the Navy. Jerry Hugh was going to join the Air Force, and Bob Roberts, who was crazy as a bug, was going to join the Marine Corps. And Dudley Smith, whose father was well decorated from World War I, was of course going to join the Army. So my father had died earlier. So I went to my mother and said, okay, I'm going to go down and join the Marine Corps. And she said, you have to be 18 before you get your parents' permission, don't you? I said, yes, ma'am. She said, well, you ain't got it. So I said, all right. So I waited another almost a year and turned 18, and I did go down and I joined the Marine Corps. I went through the initial training, which is at a boot camp, and why they call it a boot camp, I'll never know, but it's a recruit depot where you get the initial training of close order drill, manual of arms, how to shoot your rifle and that sort of thing, all sorts of military stuff. Then from there, you go to a infantry training regiment, either at Camp Lejeune or Camp Pendleton out in California. And there you become part of a tactical unit. And everybody goes through the initial infantry regiment training. Because the Marine Corps believes that every Marine is a rifleman. So that, you know, you can take a truck driver or a cook or whoever it may be, a mechanic, and they have the basic skills to go in as replacements into the infantry regiments. So anyway, I finished there, and by that time the 1st Marine Division had finished their duty on Guadalcanal and had gone to Australia, which the Marines loved because all the eligible Australian men were up in the desert fighting with Rommel, so it was a pleasant place to be for them. Then they went to Cape Gloucester, which was not much of a fight, but it was very rainy. It rained all the 30 days that they were there. From there, the 1st Marine Division went to the Russell Islands, and they stayed there for their training and their next assignment, and I joined the division on the Russell Islands. And their next assignment was Peleliu, and they were to seize, attack, and hold Peleliu because it's about, I don't know, about 1,000 miles east of Mindanao, where MacArthur was going to land to retake the Philippines. And there was an artillery outfit attached to some of MacArthur's outfit, and the Marines had painted on the barrel of these artillery pieces, "By the grace of God and a few Marines, MacArthur has returned to the Philippines." So the Army found out about that and made them paint that out anyway. Then after Peleliu, there was a program that had started, which was called a V12 program, and there were some young men who were selected and were sent to a college for a year or maybe 18 months, and they were prospective officers. They were selected and screened, and hopefully they would become young officers. And that program consisted of a year or 18 months at a college. And the colleges were all over the United States because they were mostly empty because everybody else had gone off to fight the war, I guess. Anyway, I was assigned to a small school in Louisiana, Louisiana Polytechnic Institute, which is Louisiana Tech now, in a small town in northern Louisiana, Ruston, Louisiana. And it was the time of my life. The people were friendly, you know, good old Louisiana people. I spent a year there. And from there, we went to Camp Lejeune, which is in North Carolina, to sort of a screening outfit. And what they did there was make you just about as miserable as they could think of making you, and to see how you take it. Then if you survived that, you went to Quantico, which is the Marine Corps schools in Quantico, Virginia, and we went through the officers candidate class, and about half of us made it through that class. And when we graduated, we became second lieutenants. And from there, I went out and rejoined the 1st Marine Division for the Okinawan campaign. And after the Okinawan campaign was over, we were preparing for the invasion of Japan, which I don't think anybody looked forward to at all. However, they dropped the atomic bombs, and the Air Force had just about burned all the Japanese major cities. So the Japanese were in some bad trouble, I think. And the submarine force had just about isolated the Japanese islands. It was hard for the Japanese to get any supplies in by ship. And it was, you know, they couldn't get them in any other way. So I think Japan was probably on its last leg. After the 2 atomic bombs had been dropped, the Japanese surrendered.